I came to Miami in 1963, straight out of graduate school. I had spent the first 18 years of my 24 years this side of heaven trying to get an education. Finished AU School of Social Work in 1963. Ended up not having a job, needed a job. Went to the local Urban League to get some assistance in finding a job. And the guy said, well, why don't you come to the Urban League movement? They've got a vacancy down in Miami. So I said, well, what do y'all do? He said, well, you know, we fight on behalf of colored people trying to get equal opportunity. I said, well, I've been doing that all my life. For the last 7 years, I've been demonstrating all over North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia, some parts of Mississippi. So it sounded like a natural fit for me. Came down and applied for the job and got the job. Came in September. In October that same year, my predecessor, James Whitehead, resigned, and they made me the acting executive director of the Urban League of Greater Miami. What a mistake they made. When I got here in the 60s, Miami was laid back. Every major city in the South that had a significant black population had had a riot. Miami was the last city to think about publicly being angry. And I was just astonished that they had not exploded. Because when I took my first tour as part of the indoctrination to convince me to take the job, was in the Negro Central District, which is now called Overtown. It was deplorable. It was despicable. Good Bread Alley, you name it, it looked like a place that no one should want to live. So I was surprised that Miami was so backwards in the 60s when I got here, and so passive in their behavior in reaction to what was going on around the country. The Urban League back in 1963 mainly stayed in its place. The Urban League was looked upon as that piece of community organization that had the responsibility of saying publicly to the other world, we're talking about the problems with our colored people, and there's no need for us to be angry because we're talking about the problems for our colored people. So from 1943 to 1963, I would say that the greatest contribution that the Urban League of Greater Miami made was to have a meaningful yet fruitless conversation with the white power structure. Well, I changed that because I was sort of at a point in my life. I was 24. I had been in Atlanta, Georgia. I had been with Rap Brown and Stokely Carmichael and John Lewis and Jose Williams. I had been with Lonnie X, so I was angry. So that's how I became very, very aggressive in doing things in the community. The first thing I decided to do, that somebody need to at least be mad. So I became the guy that was mad. I became the guy who did not behave like the rest of the quote-unquote executive directors of the Urban League behaved. So I figured that if I was mad and just got here, then folks who were already here ought to be mad, and they just needed somebody to wake them up. My high level of what I call professional insanity was able to allow me to get to the conference table because people said, well, we need to talk to him. We need to have a conversation. What is he upset about? And that's the role of the Urban League. Once we got your attention, then we already had a plan in place. The first thing was to begin to take advantage of those opportunities afforded us by virtue of the passage of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, and affirmative action became the rule of the day. And the Urban League was the only place where Burdines and Jordan Marsh and Richards and Florida Power and Light Company and Southern Bell and then Eastern Airlines could go to for assistance, whether they want to or not, want to hire blacks or not. The law now said you got to. The law said if you don't do it now, you're going to be punished. So they needed some direction, they needed some assistance, and the Urban League of Greater Miami provided that assistance. And I'm very pleased with their willingness to cooperate, and I'm very pleased with our ability to fulfill their agenda. Because out of that effort, we began to desegregate every employment force in this town. First blacks at Florida Power and Light Company. First blacks at then Southeast National Bank. First blacks at Southern Bell. First blacks at Jordan Marsh. First airline stewardess at Eastern Airlines. First helioc welder at Eastern Airlines. You name it, we claimed it, and we did it. So out of that anger came some very positive results.